Okay, hi, here's an update for Chemistry 110 students with Dr. B for October 12, 2016. As you know, we're not performing a lab this week because of a holiday. And here's a general update on where things stand. The lab reports are continuing to improve, but there's some issues that still remain. A lot of students still are not getting the tense right. The lab reports are supposed to be written in the past tense. I'm sure by next week you'll get the hang of it. When you're typing out calculations, what I'd recommend you do is one of two things. Please don't just type them out using a word processor where you're just not using an equation editor. They're very, very hard to follow, these multiple lines of things without canceled units. I'd greatly prefer it if you just wrote it neatly by hand, or if you used an equation editor, which almost nobody is doing at this point. So if you simply write out the calculations by hand neatly, that's full credit, and it's easier for me to follow. Just leave a space and then write them in neatly by hand where they go, and then you should be fine. There's a lot of students that are getting some of their calculations wrong because they're neglecting to include the units, so things just don't cancel right. So remember to include the units in your calculations. The post labs are improving. There's very few students, if any, that are neglecting to write it at all. But for the most recent one, there was a calculation that perhaps half the class got wrong, where it gave the percent yield if the formula of magnesium oxide was Mg2O, or that would be a subscript there. And note if that's the case, that you've got, let's see, 24, 48, plus the 16 for the oxygen, making about 64 grams of magnesium oxide with that weird and impossible formula. But if that were the case, notice that every 48 roughly of the 64 grams would be coming from magnesium, whereas a lot of people thought that only 24 of the 64 grams came from the magnesium. So I hope you can see that that's what you need to do to get that right. We are going to have a quiz next week, as promised, on the Salt Solutions Lab, which I believe is the one you'll be handing in next time. So have a look at that. Be sure that your lab notebook is ready to go for our titration lab that we'll be performing next Wednesday. Some students are forgetting to put the purpose, and then they squeeze it in somewhere during the course of the lab, so try to have that in ready to go. It's supposed to show that you know what's going to be happening. Write down those tables. Everybody seems to be doing a good job on that. And note, brand new thing, there's going to be a pre-lab this time. It's written up in the laboratory procedure, so come to class with that pre-lab answered, please. Okay, thanks guys, and I will see you next week.